the repulsive, ignorant, damaging, harmful things that are being said about our church. Now, here's the thing. This is when the lawyer clause came out and I got a manicure and I came here ready.
Yeah, I think also why this makes me so upset is Hannah, Ballerina Farm, her dad has passed away. And Alyssa Granfell, you're still mocking him and he's dead.
I think that's one of the reasons it's so important to me to debunk some of this stuff. I was so sad. Like, it brought me to tears that she didn't come back because some liar online.
Tell me you're ignorant and uneducated without telling me you're ignorant and uneducated.
BS, Alyssa Granfell.
Like, no one talks like that. Don't make it weird. You're the only one saying that. Like, it felt abusive watching this clip.
I did like a dancing spin move and I was wearing clip-ons because I had to match the other girls, and my earrings flew out into the audience and totally hit someone in the head.
But that's what's so cool about our faith, is that we don't ask anyone to leave behind anything good.
I don't do it anymore, obviously, and my skin looks bomb because of it, but, you know.
The nipples.
Oh, let's not end on that.
I'm sorry. I can't stop thinking about them.
That's what the atonement is, and that's why I love this religion, is that it's the religion of second chances.
The following is an episode of Ward Radio and does not represent the thoughts or the opinions of KHTS, its owners, or any of its affiliates, nor does it represent the official opinion of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the program.
Welcome to Ward Radio Women. We are broadcasting from the Relief Society room. Today, I've got Brittany the Shadow. Say hello. We've got Megan. Hi. Megan, our master of love and the law. We've got Riley, the writing raven. And joining us is Rachel Patterson. She is joining from her own channel, Women in the Priesthood. There, I got it. Women in the Priesthood. We're so excited to have her here with us as Ward Radio Women today. And I'm Tikla. Today, we're going to be responding to some YouTube shorts or YouTube clips that have reference to the church, and we thought they'd be interesting to get some of our thoughts. But before we dive in, Megan, what did you want to say?
Yes. If I may just have everyone's attention for a couple of seconds. Prior to recording this episode, I reached out to a couple of the women of Ward Radio and expressed a massive concern that's been weighing on me. The concern is, do we look petty and dumb for gathering as a group and debunking one girl's little bit of content on the internet? It really bothered me. I didn't want us to come across as petty or incapable of having, or incapable of having independent thoughts. So then my lovely sisters who responded just presented the evidence and showed me the repulsive, ignorant, damaging, harmful things that are being said about our church. Now, here's the thing. This is when the lawyer clause came out and I got a manicure and I came here ready. Because for those who say get a life, stop debunking these other women, blah, blah, blah. My family, which includes the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is my life. So if you're going to come for me, I'm going to meet you at the front door and we're going to have a little discussion. So with that, let's get into the episode.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I think that's a great intro. Okay, so the first clip, this is from Alyssa Granfell, and it's entitled Ex-Mo Heavenly Father. Let's play it.
Let's ask AI to make us an image of an ex-Mormon man. I did feed it a little bit of information about ex-Mormons just so that it has some context, but let's see where it takes it. They decided to put my guy in downtown Salt Lake, looks like, and he's still wearing garment-appropriate clothing, and he's pretty clean-cut, but he's got the coffee. Let's make him more ex-Mormon. Okay, we're leveling up. We got long hair, we got the hippie going on, and he's still got his little latte. But we need it to be even more ex-Mormon. My hippie ex-Mormon dude is at a pride festival. He's got his open shirt, his rainbow flag, and he might be a little blazed. I need him to be more ex-Mormon. He's now gone shirtless. He's got 2 cigarettes somehow. Still chilling at the pride festival with his septum piercing. Let's see what it does when we make him as conceivably ex-Mormon as possible. I think my dude has turned into a Satanist or an anarchist. I can't tell. Produce God of the ex-Mormon men. He is levitating cigarettes. I will be praying to this God tonight.
Okay.
Funny, but weird.
Wow. Clearly, this is comedy. She's being funny. So I think we don't need to take this too seriously. But also, what?
Eating cigarettes.
Like, why in the first place? Why? Like if anyone did this to any other group, that's what I've always got to imagine. What would that look like if someone did this to another
that
group?
Part right there, Riley. That part right there.
Yeah, totally.
Ugh.
Well, and I think it's fair to say that we don't believe that anyone who leaves the church is on this trajectory, right? This isn't like, okay, you left the church, now you're doomed, you're a Satanist. Like, no, people leave the church and go on to live productive, excellent, wonderful lives that are great. So we're not, there's so much going on in this, right? And I think it's meant to create a rise out of a faithful member where you're just kind of at a loss. Like, what are you talking about? But I also think it's fair to say that the opposite of good is evil, and the opposite of self-control is addiction, and the opposite of chastity is trampling sacred things. And so I think this is really interesting.
I always think it's interesting being from like I grew up near Boston, where we all know like all of New England is Catholic. And I have literally never once heard someone define themselves as ex-Catholic or not Catholic. Like I've never heard, and this is an area, it's like New England is like Catholic Utah in the sense that basically most people are Catholic or have Catholic origins. But I've never heard anyone define themselves by what they're not, because it shouldn't give you any information. But we actually have a sense of what someone who is an ex-Mormon actually looks like. Like, I don't think ChatGPT could say, give me an ex-Muslim. And I don't think they would know I don't think ChatGPT could actually generate a caricature. But the antithesis of Mormonism, what I think is interesting about the Mormon caricature is it's someone who's happy, is someone who's confident, is someone who's like standing up straight and light filled. So it's interesting that ChatGPT knows what the antithesis of Mormonism is.
Absolutely.
I think that's interesting. I never thought about that, but that's their identity is ex-Mormon. They haven't really gone on to create a new identity for themselves. That specific group of people, and I'm talking about the antis and the toxic ex-Mormons, right? Not just the people that leave. I'm not talking about them. People that create a lifestyle being ex-Mormon. That's interesting, right? I never thought of it
it's
that
like
direct.
You hear people, it's like they'll move on. They'll move on to be like, oh yeah, I used to be Catholic, or I grew up Catholic. Now, but they move on to, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily even have to be another religion. They just move on to identifying with something that has more core value to them. Like, and that's what it is. It's like, okay, if you're not going to be this, what are your core values? And I've always thought it interesting to go to a place, like to go visit Utah. And I'm like, what is this ex-Mormon? Like, what is that even? Okay, so now I know what you're against. I have no idea what values you actually live for. And I think it does show that they're kind of, if you define yourself by what you are not, and you define yourself by what you don't believe, you are still flitting in the wind. Because you have nothing anchoring.
And Rachel, for whatever it's worth, this is what an ex-Catholic looks like. I was baptized as a baby. I went to an all-girl Catholic high school. And even just saying the word ex-Catholic makes me cringe because I feel that it's disrespectful to my family who put me through a Catholic education that cost money. It's disrespectful to all the nuns and the priests that taught me. I made a decision at 33 years old to seek a religion where I felt closer to God, and I found it in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But for anybody wondering what an ex-Catholic looks like, it's like this.
Aww. Well, and that's what's so cool about our faith is that we don't ask anyone to leave behind anything good. You bring all of it with you. You get to keep all of your great identities that were serving you, that are full of goodness and light and truth. And we just add more. And so there's no reason to have an ex identity in the church. And that's really powerful. I think it's cool. I think we're also, I like to think about how we can't really worship nothing. Like we might think that we can, but we either worship something knowingly or we worship something unknowingly. And I think it's far more dangerous to worship something unknowingly. So if you think you worship nothing, you have a highest priority. It's just owning you instead of you being intentional about it. And maybe it is this guy. I mean, who knows?
Maybe. What you were saying, Rachel, made me think of what President Nelson has been saying so much lately about he's been putting such an emphasis on identity, you know, making sure that we first identify as children of God, children of the covenant, and disciples of Christ. And so I think that there's a very interesting direct comparison to people who've kind of left that behind. And that's very sad. And like Brittany said, not just people who leave the church and move on with their lives, but people who part of their primary identity is being X or being anti or whatever it may be. Like our scary friend Maleficent Jr. here.
His nipples are staring into my soul.
They're so uncomfortable. They're so horrible.
Wait, go back out. I want to see. What?
I will never forget.
All right. Anything else to say on this one before we move on?
Now we can move on from Mr. Nipples.
Number one, like step one away from being a Mormon is a very good looking man. It makes me wonder what it would put for a Mormon guy. I bet he would be a very good looking, upstanding gentleman. So, I don't know.
All right. So we got more Alyssa Granfell coming up. Strangest rules that Mormons follow.
Mormons are very anti-self-love. I've heard more than one story about Mormon men keeping pictures of Jesus in their shower to avoid falling into sin. Here's the number one marker of a true follower
Do we want
of Christ. Only one.
Take these one at a time, maybe?
I don't know if I want to talk about that one, Tikla.
Okay, I will.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you'll take it. I was like, oh, this is so awkward.
Okay, so she's talking about how we discourage masturbation. Okay, yes, we do. Do people fall short of that ideal? 100%. Because we're weak. And because we're weak, we are human. And when we bring our weakness and we still hold an ideal, that is humility. When we hold up an ideal that we know we're too weak to reach, that's humility. And when we're humble and we come to the Lord and he will show us our weakness and he will make it strong. And strength is having the power over our sexual impulses, not being controlled by them. And so I think weak people ridicule others who are attempting to have self-control. And that's all I have to say on that.
Oh, thank goodness. No, I'm kidding.
All right, we'll move on.
No,
what's another
But I had
rule?
a thought.
Yes.
I think it's so weird when people, ex-Mormons, say the rules that we have to follow. Like, okay, yeah, there are guidelines. I mean, that sounds a little Pirates of the Caribbean-ish, but it's true. Like, if we break a rule, right, if we don't follow, we're not kicked out. Like, it's not like you're shunned. Like, it's just weird to me how they always say these rules, these archaic rules. It's
true. And then she kind of frames it as if the rule is to keep a picture of Jesus in your shower, which no one has asked anyone to do that.
I don't think Jesus
and
wants to be
then
in your shower.
extreme consequences, right? It's like, or else you're hedonist and you're outcast and you're awful. And like, no one talks like that. Don't make it weird. You're the only one saying that.
True.
Don't
Next
make it
rule
weird is a good Tikla.
Don't make it weird.
Don't make it weird.
Okay, next weird Mormon rule.
One pair of earrings, and no earrings for men, of course. I cannot tell you how many stories I heard from my young women's leaders growing up about how when Gordon B. Hinckley gave this talk, they went to their room and removed all of their extra earrings because they knew that was what the Lord wanted. Not surprising, but it is funny to me. No gambling. Mormons are not permitted to gamble.
Okay, we can stop. That was 2. We'll do 2 in 1. So, extra piercings. This is like our salvation. If you have 2 piercings, it's over for you, apparently. This is the first time I'm hearing this. Thank you, Alyssa, for teaching Sunday school.
So true. I have, here's the deal. And I grew up in a family who I love and I think is wonderful. They did go a little extreme on the earring thing specifically. I did hear one of them say at one point, if one piercing is okay, isn't it more righteous to have no piercings at all? And so there's like this legacy of no earrings. And I wasn't going to be allowed to get my ears pierced until I was 18 and could make my own decisions. But when I was in a bunch of shows in high school, and there was one show where I did like a dancing spin move, and I was wearing clip-ons because I had to match the other girls, and my earrings flew out into the audience and totally hit someone in the head. And at that point, my parents were like, you know what? One piercing is okay. So I'm a little bit of a rebel, started a bit of a revolution in my family. So I'm just grateful for the one earring piercing that I have. So I'll take the win.
Tikla and friends, I have a quick question. Just for the people who have come upon our channel, and welcome, we're happy you're here, who aren't very familiar with our faith. And also for me, to help me out. As far as I'm concerned, these rules or guidelines, or there's even a softer word for it, are found in one of our sacred books called Doctrines and Covenants. But where are the rules about the piercings and the picture of Jesus in the shower? And honestly, because, there are some people who want to do some fact checking of their own. And where can they go to really find out what our guidelines are in this church?
So with the earrings, I think it was first set on the Strength for Youth pamphlet.
For the Strength of Youth.
Yeah.
Well, it was first said in a talk by Gordon B. Hinckley, I would say.
And then it was in the pamphlet.
Earrings. And then it was which is the pamphlet for youth, for the youth of the church, which I think is significant because, well, both the talk and the pamphlet are interesting because the talk that Gordon B. Hinckley gave on this topic also included talk about raves and the trend of youth choking each other until they were unconscious, and tattoos and piercings. And he was talking about all of these 90s trends that were happening that he was kind of like bringing to the attention of parents. He's speaking to parents. He was saying, be aware this is going on. Let's protect our children from doing things that will cause them to have regret later. So usually a tattoo you got when you were 16, or I don't even know if that's allowed, but when you're younger, it's going to be one you're more likely to regret. Things that we do to our body when we're younger can have a big effect on what happens later. And so it was much more it had nothing to do with sin or salvation. It was like how to avoid regret. And then those principles were incorporated into the guidelines for the youth, things to follow, things to help keep you protected. And then in the most recent edition of the For Strength of Youth pamphlet, it's actually, there are very few specific lines drawn in the sand. It's just the principles being taught, and then you're expected to pray, receive your own answers about how to behave, which I think is great. I think it's a perfect stepping stone to personal conversion, and I think the new pamphlet is amazing. But yeah, if you wanted to see what's been said in the past, that would be a place to start.
Thanks, friend.
Perfectly said, Tikla. Good job.
Oh, thank you. Okay, anything else on one pair of earrings?
No.
And gambling. Gambling's dumb. Don't do it. That's a great guideline. That's not a weird rule at all. It's such a bad idea.
Yeah, because one time I lost like $40 in 2 seconds and it sucked. So don't do that.
I think at the end of the gambling part, she did mention that someone once asked for her lucky numbers and then they used them to go gamble. And she felt so ashamed because she participated in gambling. And I think that is an interesting thing we could talk about a little bit, is shame, and how sometimes when there are lines drawn in the sand that are guidelines that are just meant to help us to avoid bigger problems, we can take upon ourselves a lot of shame for association or for little things that aren't really that big of a deal, but we take on this feeling. I don't know. I've thought a lot about how shame is kind of like pride disguised as humility. Pride disguised as repentance. So we come across something that makes us feel bad, and then because we felt like we needed to be good enough to save ourselves, we beat ourselves up and feel like that's repentance, when in reality, our actions aren't what save us. And so if we're feeling shame, it's probably tied to some kind of pride we had in our own ability to save ourselves. Yeah. So if I believed that avoiding gambling was going to save me, not my Savior Jesus Christ, then associating with gambling is going to make me feel shame and make me feel like if I beat myself up enough, I'll save myself by being perfect instead of turning to Christ. Anyway, something I
also have another thought too. So coming from someone, I don't think I've ever really experienced shame to that degree. Like, I felt bad about things I've done and I've repented, but to have crippling shame, like some people feel like they have, like whether it's like religion, OCD, or whatever their shame is, pride, whatever it is, like you said, Tikla, like that's getting in the way of you and Christ's atonement. That's holding you back, having that shame. Like, feel bad, have remorse for things that you sinned of or that you did wrong, but you should never have crippling shame about anything.
Yeah, well, I think also, I think a lot of people struggle with, I've seen this in some of people I know, but they struggle with feeling like they've let their parents down, but they don't want to admit that because they want to turn their parents into the bad guy or turn their parents into the church. And so they end up feeling all this guilt because they know that you're supposed to honor your parents. It's something inherent in us. It's one of the commandments. And so they end up feeling really guilty when they do something. Oh, I don't think my mom or my dad would feel good about that. And so instead of kind of reconciling that and admitting that, yeah, I should honor my parents, they kind of turn their parents into this big, bad, scary entity or even the church. So I don't know if that made sense, but
I like that point that I think like there's this kind of like somehow Brene Brown became like the 13th apostle, because she's just made the word shame be this thing that is just bad. But like having talked to people who say that like, you know, my subculture could use the women in my subculture could use a little shame. Like shame is a social construct emotion that gives you information, and in some ways, like not a toxic dose of it, like not a chronic, like Tikla's describing like a chronic, like a lifestyle of shame that cripples you emotionally. Like shame can also be your connection to integrity, which is like, I've crossed a boundary maybe with myself. Like I have like crossed a moral boundary. Yeah. And maybe like shame is more than guilt. Right. And so I know we've demonized the idea of shame. It's like, if you ever feel shame, you should reject it. I'm like, shame is probably also a good thing that might let you know when you've done something that even breaks your own moral compass. And to the point you were just saying, Riley, is like, I think that sometimes that shame, that feeling of true shame, which is a personal integrity thing, is so painful to feel that it can kind of put you into a fight or flight mode where you want to fight against and blame. It's like a fight or flight mode, really, where you want to fight and flight against anyone who you think could be making you feel this way. It's someone else's fault. It's your parents. It's the church. You know, it's this culture I'm raised in. I don't want to feel this shame. And having had conversations with some women who are in that state, I'm like, look, there's no way that like you can't be in a place where you know you're breaking your own moral code and feel okay with it.
Right.
Like,
right.
Yes. Well, yeah, I've heard that's what I was trying to say.
But it would be great if somebody else, if we could blame someone else for it, then I think you said that.
Right.
I thought it was good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think guilt is to the soul what pain is to the body, right? It can be very informative. Like if I've got my hand on a hot stove and it's hurting me, I need to be in tune enough to the pain in my body to know to stop doing that. I think the same can go for that feeling of our soul. If our conscience can be pricked, then we know we're in tune. If we're so dull to our own conscience and we're so numbed to it, then we'll miss. Okay, guys, this is a really great segue into the clip. This is a clip from the video Ex-Mormon Drinks Alcohol for the First Time from Cut on YouTube.
I lost my virginity at 17. My mom found out when I was 18. She went through my trash, still goes through my trash, and she found stuff in my room. She told my dad, and it just really sucks because my dad has this perspective of me of being like his little princess, and so I feel like that just like kind of shattered his world to hear that.
Okay, wait, pause, hold on. Okay, so with this episode, so my first shot, I was thinking like vaccine, but it's literally like a shot of alcohol, right?
Yeah.
So when
on this episode, they have the people on the show like give really vulnerable experiences, and they're related to their time in the church.
And then they tell them to take a shot?
And then they give them a shot.
Why is that good advice? When you're vulnerable and have an emotional response, why would it be take a shot after sharing this emotional? That's horrible.
Because that's what the world has to offer. That's all they have to offer. You're sad and you feel awful about something that happened. Let's numb out. Let's all numb out.
You know what I think is weird too? One of the first things that happens when someone leaves our church, right, and decides to become what do? They go out drinking or they go out swinging.
It's so true.
It's usually one of those things.
It's so
and
true.
It's weird that as LDS people, we're constantly mocked that we don't drink. But then take someone who is out in the world and say they are sober, right? Because they made horrible life decisions. They were abusive. They had liver disease. Whatever their situation was that led them to become sober, they're celebrated. It was like, oh my gosh, good for you for putting that down. Yet we're mocked for abstaining from those things, from not having liver disease due to alcohol consumption, by not having horrible life decisions happen because we're drunk. Like, why is it always when someone leaves our church, they're told to start drinking? But then if they get out of drinking, they're celebrated because now they're sober. It's just weird to me. It's so weird.
Yeah. It's just really bad life advice too. It felt abusive watching this clip. Like, okay, so first of all, I hope everyone has someone in their life who would be deeply disappointed if they did something that was bad for them, like something that was hurting their soul. I hope everyone would have someone in their life who'd be disappointed by that. Because that means you have someone in your life who loves you, who wants the best things for you. And so while that's really painful to come to terms with, I did something that disappointed my dad, that disappointed my mom, that disappointed my family, the answer isn't, okay, let's drown my sorrows in alcohol and go live however the heck now that my conscience is dulled, and now I'll go live however my natural desires take me. No, there's hope. There's hope for you. There's so much healing and power in the atonement of Jesus Christ to change us. And we don't have to carry that with us anymore, nor do we have to numb it out.
Yeah. That girl, she doesn't need a shot. She needs a hug.
She needs a hug. That's exactly how I felt watching that. Just come here.
Yeah.
I am confused though. I am wondering, so what is this poor suffering daughter of God? What does this have to do with the church? Like, is this in some kind of context that's saying, look, because the church doesn't endorse people having premarital sex at their own leisure, that the church is somehow responsible for her sorrow somehow? I'm just wondering what it has to do with the church here.
My thoughts exactly.
The message seems to be from the channel that the church is oppressive because it looks down on you if you have sex out of wedlock or if you drink alcohol. And so the comments are all just like, oh, I'm so glad you're getting out of that. Now you can live your best life.
So you can just go have miscellaneous sex at your leisure, like that's going to lead to happiness or something. Okay, interesting.
Well, but if you drink a shot afterwards, then you'll be okay.
Oh, my bad.
That's the formula.
It's like a magic potion, Riley. You're right. Fantasy novels, it's a magic potion. There you go.
Just fixes everything. That's what alcohol does, right? It's just a cure-all. I'm so grateful for the word of wisdom, guys. I'm so grateful.
My favorite thing is, like, I really wished, I know these videos, and maybe we should do like a series of the photos of the Facebook groups or the Instagrammers who are people who are like 40 years old, who are like drinking, taking shots for the first time. And it's so funny because to non-Mormon people who are just casual drinkers, who have a totally normal relationship with alcohol, they look so juvenile. Like, it's like being a fifth year senior or a fifth year senior. Like, everybody parties in most colleges, everybody parties freshman and sophomore year. It's totally normal, but no one wants to be the guy or the girl who can't get their act together and graduate with a bachelor's degree in 4 years. You don't want to be that kid who's still in an undergrad partying away like a fifth year senior. And they look kind of ridiculous when they are like, look at me, I'm free now. And everybody else who's not Mormon and isn't part of the Mormon world who sees that says, aren't you like an adult yet? Like, don't you want to be an adult
and I think
yet?
some of what they're saying is I'm reclaiming those lost years that I missed out on. I missed out on the chance to be young and stupid and do whatever I want. And so now I'm reclaiming that. But the world looks at it and goes, nobody thinks drinking's empowering. Everyone knows that it's just an escape. It's entertainment. It's not empowering on any level. That's not how this works.
And you got to keep it in control because now your metabolism is slower. So watch it, you know?
Well, but I was rereading D&C 89, right? Is that what the word of wisdom is? Help me, guys.
I think so.
And I was rereading the first little part of it. And I think it's so interesting because it says that this is wisdom given for the weakest of all saints, or for those who would be called saints. And I used to read that and think like, so even the weakest members can follow this. But I realized as I read it, that doesn't make sense because it actually takes a lot of self-control to live the word of wisdom. And so what I think it's actually referencing is that there's probably some of us who could have a really healthy relationship with alcohol or coffee or some of these substances and be fine, could take it occasionally and be just fine. But there's also many of us who would have a really big problem with these substances. And so in a sense, this is given to all of us on behalf of those who are weakest among us. So it's almost like this cool sacrifice we make for each other. It's kind of like, you know what? We don't know how we would do with this. Let's all live this way together so nobody suffers.
Yeah,
so everyone can have the blessings.
Yeah. I've got family members who have very addictive personalities, and any of them who've even touched alcohol have gone down the rabbit hole of misery and made everyone around them miserable. I think you're absolutely right. It's for those of us who are in that kind of vein. If we never touch it, we're fine. And this is making people have infinitely happier lives just by virtue of never touching it in the first place.
Yeah, it's a way to bear your testimony or share your testimony. It's strengthening you and then strengthening others. I think that's a good way to see it.
And for those of you who have stuck around to this point, I have some tea to spill for you. So thank you for making it this far.
Is it herbal tea?
Girl, it is the furthest thing from herbal tea.
A little chamomile.
So whenever I'm off camera, I say these quick prayers like, Heavenly Father, is this appropriate to share or should I shut up? And Cardin can edit this out if he wants to because I want to make sure that we are respectful to our audience. Surprise, surprise, because I got baptized when I was 33, I did drink. Sometimes I drank a little bit too much. I was never... Rachel, let me finish.
Yeah.
Let me finish.
Shame.
So when I was in law school, it was one of the most horrific experiences of my life. It was physically taxing. It was mentally taxing. I hated every second of it. I wanted to quit every single second. So what did I do? Me and a group of friends, we would go to Vegas every now and then, and we wouldn't eat. We would drink and we would dance and we would have horrific headaches and we would lament over the receipts in our purses saying how much we ordered at the bar. And it was stupid, especially since we were unemployed students. That's a little tiny specific example, but I share that to say, as someone who has indulged in alcoholic beverages, they are easily accessible. They are cheap. People celebrate you drinking and it looks all great and fine and dandy. But that did not help me pass the bar. That didn't help me feel great and alive in class or happy when I woke up the next morning. It did nothing but bad things for me. But I also want to share with people that are watching. It's not like, you have to never have had a sip of alcohol to be a welcome member in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I know that's not what we're saying, but I just want to make it abundantly clear as an ex-Catholic, as someone who enjoyed Pinot Grigio.
Don't identify like that.
Right. I just want to put it out there. We come in all shapes and forms with different pasts. So I don't do it anymore, obviously, and my skin looks bomb because of it. But, I just wanted to make it abundantly clear. I'm not this perfect, pious member of the church. Thank you.
And no one is. And that's what I was saying earlier. What are these rules that people keep saying? like you said, everyone is welcome. Everyone has a past. Even if you are a member your whole life, there's still some stuff that you got to clear up and repent of. Don't have crippling shame over it, but move forward. And that's what the atonement is. And that's why I love this religion, is that it's the religion of second chances.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I on my last ward, we had 3 blended families, meaning blended families, families that had gone through divorce and then had blended their families together. And because it was a military ward, there were guys that had like full arm tattooed sleeves, like full arm tattoos. And I remember looking at my husband all the time being like, I love coming to church here. I love a ward like this. Reminds you that this is a gospel of second chances, a gospel of second and third chances. And I'm a sucker for second chance stories, that it really has so much more to do about progress and learning than it does about this immediate perfection. Like this poor girl who, in many ways, what she's experiencing is like the brutal heavy weight of making your first big mistake, and how overwhelming that feeling can be, and how hopeless you feel when you've made a huge mistake. And in our youth, in our naivete, we can always think like, oh my gosh, it's over. It's over. I blew it. I think we've all felt that. And so it is a helpful reminder. We've all felt that, like that feeling she's feeling. We have all felt that. I just really wish that there had been someone in her life who had been like, join the club, girlfriend. Like we've all made really big mistakes, and we're all still allowed to be here.
Yes. And yeah. I think that's one of the reasons it's so important to me to debunk some of this stuff, that like the Alyssa video about all the rules. One of them in there is no tattoos. And she acknowledged that stance has softened lately. But I was thinking about, there was a woman who came with the missionaries to join our ward for one Sunday, and she was just learning more about us, and she loved it. She was so fun in Sunday school. Like, she had all these comments, and she just kept saying, I found my family. I found my people. This is amazing. She left that day and went online and looked up a bunch of stuff, and was told that we would never accept her because she had tattoos, that we would always judge her because she had tattoos, that she was somehow not ever going to be accepted. And I was so sad. Like, it brought me to tears that she didn't come back because some liar online told her something we don't believe. And it made me so sick, because in ward council the following Sunday, when the missionaries reported that she wouldn't be coming back, our bishop said, that's it. We're all going to the tattoo parlor right now. And he was joking, but that's how dead serious he was about how much we do not care about your tattoos.
I'd be like, okay, bitch, let's go.
Yeah. Like, bring it on. Like, we'll iron them on. I don't care. Yeah. Something like it's so not about that. Come worship with us. We're just here for Jesus, and we love him, and we love you.
Yeah. It's like, I just had a thought. So when you said, she went online and there was some liar that said about, whatever, XY reason why she shouldn't be a member. It's like, going back to the alcohol analogy, it's like someone at a party telling you to drink, right? You're going to be so liberated. But then when you're going home hungover, they're not there holding your hair while you're throwing up in the toilet. They're leaving you stranded. They don't care what happens to you afterwards. They just want to get you. And that's what people online do. And that's why we debunk and why we do what we do.
I'm so thankful you guys both said that, because honestly, I was struggling with that the past couple of days. Like, why are we collectively going after these videos to debunk when we all have individual testimonies and a plethora of experiences? But the information that is out there is very, very dangerous when it's false. And it took me 8 years of investigating before I decided to join the church. And that's because I was too embarrassed to ask the missionary certain questions. I would Google the questions instead. And it really is exceptionally detrimental when people put out negative, false information about us. So I am glad that we're doing this, and thank you for educating me to this new perspective of how critical it really is to do this. So thank you.
Just doing a little offense. Just a little.
Just a little.
We have one more video. Is there anything you want to say on the last ones before we move on to it?
No, are we doing the funeral one now?
Yes.
Let's get into it.
Fun of the funeral.
Oh, no.
Okay, let's do it.
I knew Ballerina Farm was Mormon, but this reel I found on Instagram has to be the strangest modern Mormon artifact I've ever seen. First, this reel is about her father's funeral, so it's already to me kind of wild to make a reel for your father's funeral. You'll also see here that she's showing that her father is clothed in the Mormon endowment clothing, which is also used as burial clothing. But showing it online, I would think is considered pretty sacrilegious and something I get a lot of hate for, but I guess if you're an active member, it is okay.
Stop.
Also, as you
Pause there for a minute. Yeah, go ahead, Brittany.
Okay. Holy, I can't even say the word because I'm on WardRadio, but that pissed me off. Okay. Don't tell people how to grieve. First and foremost, don't tell people how to grieve. You have no idea what they're dealing with. Second off, we get mad at you for showing the temple clothing because you're there, not in the temple and not dead. You're doing it to get likes, to show people, look how weird Mormons are. That's why you're doing it. You're mocking, exactly. You're not doing it for people to understand us better. BS, Alyssa Granfell. BS. You're not dead and you're not in the temple. So you probably shouldn't be wearing those online for likes and views. Someone else can take over. I'm done being silent.
I think it's so weird that she starts the video off by saying, it's so weird to make a video of your father's funeral. But you're the one making a video of someone who made a video of their father's funeral. So doesn't that make you weird also? I don't know. That's weird. That's weird.
Well, and I went back to the comments on this original video from Ballerina Farm, and they're overwhelmingly positive. It's people who are saying, this is so beautiful. This is helping me grieve the loss of my loved one. So she must have had to dig so deep to find these comments that she's highlighting in her reel that are thinking it's kind of weird and awkward. And I think, Brittany, you nailed it. I think the reason that it's not appropriate for Alyssa to be in her temple, robes of the temple of the Holy Priesthood, is because she's no longer authorized to wear those. That's not appropriate because she's no longer authorized to wear that. And so it's just mockery. It's
also like, tell me you're ignorant and uneducated without telling me you're ignorant and uneducated. Because I'm sure if you saw a funeral procession of the mourning in a Muslim community, or if you saw a funeral procession of the mourning and grieving process of like a Hindu family or a Hindu like group of people, you would be confused by that too. But you would never mock. You would assume, you know what, this isn't my culture, or I don't understand this. I'm going to observe this with respect because it's a critical moment in their lives. But somehow, as Riley had said earlier, but somehow it's okay with Mormons or members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's okay to mock their sacred, grief-stricken moments. It's not okay. It's not okay. And we're not really going to be tolerant of it as much anymore.
Yeah, I think also why this makes me so upset is Hannah Ballerina Farm, her dad has passed away. And Alyssa Granfell, you're still mocking him and he's dead. Like, dead members of our church will still get your mockery? Like, where is your humanity? Did you leave that when you left the church too? Like, oh my gosh. Like, have respect, girl. Gosh.
Absolutely. Should we let it keep rolling?
This flower company come up quite a bit throughout the reel, which apparently is her late father's flower company. This ad feels more like an ad than it does a way to honor the father's legacy. Their smiles are huge, which I know Mormons would say is because they're excited to see.
I can't. Maybe she tagged her father's company because she's proud of the company that her dad built. And maybe that's a way of her honoring him. Also, her dad, I'm pretty sure, died of cancer, I want to say. I think it was bone cancer. I don't know if I'm 100% correct. So maybe the reason why they're taking pictures is because maybe they've seen this coming for a while. And maybe they've been processing it for a while. So at the funeral, maybe it was a celebration of life. Maybe that's what they needed to grieve. Maybe they needed to take those pictures. She needed to tag her dad's business because that's the way she still feels connected to him. And again, you're making a mockery of it. It's just absurd, and I'm astounded.
I know. It's like her dad's legacy, and I can't think of a better way. Suppose they get some more business for this flower business from this. Like, what's the big deal? That's a good thing. We're celebrating this man's life.
Yeah.
Like, I get that accusation is so strange to me. And maybe we're not ready to move on, but their smiles are so huge. What is wrong? What is wrong with that? The Mormon perspective, the LDS perspective on eternity means that you're going to see your dad again. You're going to be with him again. That's a happy thing. Like, don't you dare make fun of someone for smiling at a funeral. That is so weird.
Yeah.
And as though a celebration of life is unique to our church. That's very much a stretch.
None of it makes sense.
I lost my dad far too early as well. And I mean, probably even younger than her dad, I think, at this point. And some of the smiles at that funeral were in support of my mom. It was strength. It was a smile that meant we will go on. This is the hardest thing ever, but we will move forward and life goes on, and not just here, but life goes on into eternity and we'll be together again. And so it's just so unsettling to have her mocking the strength of joy in such a dark time for their family.
Yeah. And when you said support the mom, maybe that's why she tagged the flower business too. Maybe the mom is still running that business and she needs support because now she's the only one running it. I mean, I don't know that for sure, but I'm just speculating. Maybe that's another reason. Instead of it being an ad, it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, to call it an ad is so disrespectful.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think, Rachel, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was like, I think I've figured out her shtick, her technique is, and like, let's see if this is a prediction when we watch, is she's exploitative. She's exploiting people's vulnerable experiences, vulnerable feelings. She's exploiting for views for her own platform. So she's promoting herself by using people's extremely vulnerable, like, what's more sacred to you than family or religion? She's exploiting. And so it is very arresting for a lot of us who see her, kind of being disrespectful to things that are so vulnerable to us. She's just exploitative is how I would describe her channel. We'll see if that proves true with some of the other clips we watched from her channel.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also reminds me a little bit of the Baptisms for the Dead video we debunked, where she seems to have this like very strong aversion to death and things like that seems to make her very uncomfortable. And I think that it makes sense that if you've lost the story that helps you put death in its proper context, that it's suddenly going to be much darker and creepier and it'll feel inappropriate. Whereas coming from our perspective where death is a part of the plan, it's a really hard part of the plan, but it's part of it. We're moving on, we're moving forward, and there's a way forward for us. And because we have this rich culture to draw on during that time. And so there may be some of that going on too. I don't know. Any last thoughts on, or is there more to that video?
This loved one in the afterlife, well, you would think that would translate into some kind of calm sense of peace and not huge social media smiles like they're at a wedding.
And that's just wrapping up the smile problem. We're not allowed to smile, guys.
Social media smiles, like, just she gets to define what kind of smile this woman had at her father's
seriously, and look at the pictures. They're not even like weird smiles. This is like very normal, a normal family picture. It like looks a little cold with the kid in the coat, and nobody's posing. Nobody's got their ring lights out. This is a family picture, and so hooray for temples, hooray for forever families, hooray for the gospel. Don't worship the God of the ex-Mormons, guys. Worship Heavenly Father. He's great. Any final words?
Yeah, please never think of the God of the ex-Mormons ever again. Would like to scrub that from my mind. The nipples.
Oh, let's not end on that.
I'm sorry. Stop thinking about them. You're right. Someone think of something better to say. Something happy.
All right. This has been fun. It's been a little bit heavy. There's some lies out there about how we feel about people, and we are not standing for it anymore. We love you, and come join us. This is a great place to be. Thank you to all the WardRadio women for chatting with me, and you for all listening. All right, until next time, go give them heaven.
I love it.
Hey, that wasn't so bad. Until next time, go give him heaven. Where'd you get that?
Where'd you get that? Awesome.
That was
so
my dad. He would say that all the time.
Amazing.
My dad who passed away. He would, every time we'd go out to do something good, he'd say, okay, go give him heaven.
Aw.
I love it. That's so sweet.